We are live. We are live. Welcome to College Football's Peek Around the Corner with your host, Greg Flugar. We cover everything in college football because we truly love everything in college football. And if you do as well, if you need just that little bit of extra content to get you through the days, to get you through the nights, subscribe to our channel. Smash that like button if you like our content. Share the video with your family and friends, your psychiatrist, your priest, your cat and your dog, your significant other. Welcome into the house that sits on the corner of Keith Jackson Parkway and Kirk Gowdy Avenue. Come on in. The water's warm. We have a lot to discuss. Yes, I am back from vacation. Myself and the little general. I've got myself a pretty bad cold, so I'm going to have you help me out tonight with your comments, with your phone calls. Hopefully we'll do just a short little monologue. I got a lot of things to get off my chest. Holy smokes. The title of this show is, we would have gotten the Pac-12 deal done if it wasn't for those meddling kids. Why did I title that? Why is that the title of our comeback show tonight after vacation? Wow. The articles that I read while I was on my vacation with my lovely wife, all this continuous talk about if it wasn't for these forces out there, if it wasn't for the noise out there, a deal would have gotten done. That is hogwash. The Athletic is not keeping you from getting a deal done. CBS Sports is not keeping you from getting the deal done. Brett McMurphy, Mr. Kurtz, this little tiny show, this rebel outpost of all college football YouTube channels, the noise is not keeping you from getting the deal done. For we have received information at Peek Around the Corner that the Pac-12 presidents haven't even gotten an offer in front of them yet. That's right. Now you might say, well, Greg, that's not what we hear. We hear that deal was done and they're just working on the grant of rights. Or they got multiple offers in front of the Pac-12 president. They're just trying to choose the right one. No, they don't have a deal. They don't have an offer. They have pieces, but it hasn't been all put together. They kind of know the numbers, but they don't really know anything at all. Really, they don't. We received, for those who are not new to this channel, and for those who are, I always try to go back a little bit in time so you understand where we're coming from. January 31st, our Arizona State Money Perch guy, who's been nailing stories for years for us, especially in and around their hockey program, the creation of it, and all the little details that most of you wouldn't care about, but we loved. This guy's also been killing it when it comes to this saga that's going on. On January 31st, he told us the day after the Pac-12 meetings that Arizona State raised their voice, said their displeasure, was frustrated over the process. We heard Ray Anderson then. Now that was January 31st. And then we had some other reports backing that up as the weeks went by. And then Ray Anderson came out and said, yeah, we're frustrated. Then Arizona State Money Perch guy gave us a letter. We called it letter number 1. We went through it here on a live show. He said, we're stuck. We can't do anything. We can't do anything without Arizona. Arizona's not going to do anything unless California, Stanford move does something because Oregon and Washington does something. He was frustrated. He talked about everything that was going on. Then there was a letter 2. Then there was a letter 3. We didn't talk about it here at live show because it didn't really push the story forward. And then letter 4 came out Thursday night. And we're not even going to go through that letter, but I'm going to give you parts of it. One was, we need to see the numbers this week, this coming up week. During their Pac-12 tournaments, they need to see the numbers. We put that tweet out early yesterday morning, and then there were other stories that came out saying, yes, next week is pivotal. Sports Illustrated came out. Dellinger said that next week is vital. They need to have an offer. They need to see an offer in front of them so they can, what he called, hash it out. Hash it out. So they can sign the deal. Get it done by the end of March. But they need to see it this week. Like, how many times can we expect our football team to play on linear? How many times should we expect us to be able to be played on ESPN? And how many times should we play on Amazon? Where does our softball teams, where does that content get distributed? ESPN Plus? Okay? And how should we get paid for if we're producing the games ourselves? All these little details they have to hash out. They haven't hashed it out. They haven't hashed it out. The offer's not there. Not in a total... I tell you. And then the money shot of that letter was Arizona and Arizona State is ready to bolt if they don't see numbers this week. I mean, that's where we're at. But there is not a done deal, and they're trying to figure out the grant of rights. That was an erroneous report from somewhere else a few days ago. That's not true. And we don't believe it's true that some schools are out the door already. That's not what we're hearing. Now, you can take our information, you can do whatever you want with it. But from our perspective, from what we are hearing, and yes, it's a short, narrow pathway. It's a certain perch, a perch that happens to nail stories over and over again. But take it as you wish. The offer has to be there this week. The numbers. So let me, before we get to the rest of the show, I got so much to go through. But let me make it clear. To save the conference as it is, the 10 members, to save the conference as it is, it's not going to be saved this week, but it could implode this week. They need to get the offer. They need to hash it out. They need to figure out the grant of rights. They need to figure out, look, if I'm Arizona State, I'm Dillingham, and 2 years from now, we've turned it around and we're 8-2 going into week 12. Where should our football game be expected to play? Behind the sports app and Amazon, Apple Plus TV, or could that game be on ESPN? So I'm going to say it again. The conference could implode next week. It won't be saved next week. Next week, they have to see the offer, and then hash it out, and then they can get a deal done by the end of the month. And here is another thing I need to say. From the perspective of everybody, again, the Arizona State Money Perch has been talking. The offers are not going to get better. That's the key point. Waiting another month? No. Waiting another week? No. They're not going to get better. So, what is the offer? What is the best offer? Lay it in front of us. Let's hash it out. These schools do not want to separate from each other. They want to play with each other. They're each other's peers, but they need the offer. That's what we're telling them here at Peek Around the Corner. They don't have the offer. People are kicking around numbers of 28 million, 27 million, 26 million. They don't know what that number is because they haven't seen everything in entirety to put out in front of them so they can hash it out. It's going to take a while to hash it out, right? To figure it out, to say, okay, can this really work? You know it. But they need to have a start. They need to have an offer this week. Cloak and dagger. Let me get to something here. First of all, if you're new to the show, what we do is we do a monologue, then we get to your comments, and then we get to your phone calls. The phone lines are not open yet, but the number is 763-260-1333. We will get to your phone calls. First of all, before we get to the rest of my monologue, we are very fortunate, very, very, very fortunate here at Peek Around the Corner to have the best coffee in the world to be our sponsor. Welcome to Blue Ridge Coffee Crafters. We invite you to discover the Blue Ridge Coffee Crafters difference. Clean Clean, hot air roasted coffee produces a smoother, richer, healthier coffee that is less bitter and less acidic. Our hot air roasted coffee uses convection heat to loft the beans for a very even heat transfer. The clean, bright taste that people rave about is achieved by roasting the bean quickly and evenly while suspended on a bed of hot air. From craft to cup, hand pick coffee beans. This is the very best coffee me and the little general have ever had. Give it a try. There's a link in the description box below the video. Give it a try. Give it an order. If you do give this incredible coffee, if you do order it, if you want to support our channel, put PATC in the comments section where you order the coffee. From craft to cup. Beautiful coffee. Thank you, Blue Ridge Coffee Crafters, for being our sponsor tonight. Okay. Cloak and Dagger. There's real Cloak and Dagger, and then there's make-believe Cloak and Dagger. Remember, drink responsibly tonight. Your coffee, your tea. Okay. I want to just take this part out of the article that came out yesterday from The Athletic, because this is the money shot. Kliavkoff is facing pressure to deliver a new media rights deal to his members by the end of the month. If the dollar figures or the details are underwhelming, March may be the moment when the Big 12 finally strikes. Sources briefed on the discussion say the conference has been in recent contact with the so-called Four Corner schools, Arizona, Arizona State, Colorado, and Utah, which has renewed optimism that convincing them to join is possible. Sources briefed on the discussion say the conference has been in recent contact with the so-called Four Corner schools. Big 12 has been talking to the Four Corner schools. Now, that may not mean Brett Yormark is talking to the presidents of Colorado, Utah, Arizona, and Arizona State. It doesn't mean that, but it still means a lot. Remember, I put this out there, I tweeted this out there yesterday. CBS and The Athletic, both reporting Big 12 have had recent contact with Arizona, Arizona State, Colorado, and Utah. Conferences don't call schools first on realignment. They do not renew talks on realignment. Schools call first. Schools renew talks. This is not noise. Again, all those articles coming from the West Coast saying it's the noise. It's the noise. It's the forces that are keeping this from happening. This is not noise. Noise is not doing this. Remember, second rule of realignment. First rule of realignment is realignment never sleeps. Second rule is schools call the conferences first, not conferences call the schools. So, how can they be? What do you think is happening here, Greg? Well, we've actually heard what is happening. There are people. This This happened last spring, by the way, with USC and the Big Ten. There are people who are representing schools of the there are people representing those four corner schools who are talking with people who are discussing it with them, and the Big 12 has the knowledge that there are people talking with people who are representing the four corner schools. There are people from both sides talking that are representing the interest of the Big 12 and the four corner schools. They're talking. We got some of the names. I don't feel comfortable talking about it, but BYU is in it. BYU is in this thing for the Big 12. They're talking. The Money Perch is talking. There's a big Money Perch talking out in West Virginia, talking to certain four corner schools. They're talking. Yormark doesn't need to talk right now. There are people representing both interests. When the leak out of you when the story was given to us on the night of March 31st, it came out of the Money Perch of USC. Plain and simple. It didn't come out of the Big Ten. It did not come out of USC officials. It came from the Money Perch of USC. And they started talking to people in the Big Ten, Money Perch. They wanted this to happen. And nobody knew what Kevin Warren was going to do because no one trusted what was going to happen. I'm seeing comments. I'll get to your comments as quick as I can. TWE, that's true. Bruce Harris, what's a Money Perch? Those are people who sit on a certain perch that have certain power with their money, and they see things from a certain angle, from a certain perch, and that's about us all. We're going to talk. I'm not going to get any more detail on that, but I think you can imagine what the Money Perch is. Okay. So, there's your cloak and dagger. They are talking. They are talking. The four corner schools in the Big 12 are talking. It doesn't mean that the Pac-12 is going to implode this week. It doesn't mean it already has. We don't believe it has. We believe they're waiting for an offer so they can hash it out. And by the way, that's cloak and dagger. The cloak and dagger that supposedly, look, peek around the corner. We've tried to be Switzerland on this thing, okay? There's a lot of back and forth between Pac-12 and Big 12 writers and reporters and commentators and analysts and fans and that's a fine, whatever. They're accusing each other of being spokesmen, being paid spokesmen, whatever. Okay, but the thing is, that's not real cloak and dagger. The amount of noise, no one is stopping the Pac-12 from getting a deal done that's out here talking about what's going on. That's not cloak and dagger. The cloak and daggers was happening between the Big 12 and the Four Corner schools, and George Kliavkoff trying to keep his core together, trying to get enough time to present a deal. That's the cloak and dagger. Now, Colin Cowherd podcast yesterday. At the 7-minute mark, I would advise for those who have not heard this to go to Colin Cowherd's podcast at the 7-minute mark, and he discusses the Big Ten having their eyes on. Now I'm going to paraphrase this. You go ahead and listen to it. He goes and discusses how the Big Ten still has their eyes on Oregon and Washington, and how it might only take a 50%, like Oregon and Washington might settle for 50%, half a share of the Big Ten payouts to get into the Big Ten Conference. That's what he's heard. All I can say from a peek around the corner perspective is that we have not heard that. Now, would Oregon, not recently, would Oregon and Washington take 50% and get into the conference at this point? Yeah, they would. Of course they would. Of course they would. Because from Oregon and Washington perspective, and we've talked about this over and over again, this is not just about the next 7 years. This is about after 7 years. Of course, Oregon and Washington want to get into the Big Ten, and they're willing to make huge concessions. We announced in July, early July, that the Big Ten decision window for further expansion at this time was between August 15th and October 15th. It was going to be a no or no go for launch for further expansion. The Big Ten decided not to expand in that decision window. Recently, a couple weeks ago, Pete Thamel said the Big Ten expansion door has been cracked open. Now you got Colin Cowherd saying that he's heard, you can listen to the podcast yourself, that Big Ten is still looking at Washington and Oregon. All the way back to episode 52 of Peek Around the Corner. All the way back to episode 52, we talked about the Oregon Money Perch said that if we don't get in now, we're going to keep swinging away. And that they're willing to make concessions. And heck, they were willing to even put money towards a hockey program or create more bandwidth in their sponsored sports. In other words, if not hockey, something else. Whatever they needed to do. And they also said, consider Washington in the same boat. They would do the same thing. Are we seeing that happening right now again? Are we seeing Oregon and Washington taking another swing? We probably are. We just haven't picked up that nugget of intel here at Peek Around the Corner. Colin Cowherd has. Pete Thamel sounds like he has. We have not been able to gather that up. But we do know, and we've said this for months, we got raked over the coals on it. We got raked over the coals. But it wasn't just Kevin Warren that wanted more expansion of the Pacific Coast. It wasn't just Kevin Warren who in the Big Ten that wanted Oregon and Washington. It just wasn't Kevin Warren. He wasn't the only one. Now, this is just my speculation. Again, we have no intel on this. But the money wasn't there. The money wasn't there for more expansion. Not that, or it might have been there, but it was going to be all Amazon and maybe schools like Minnesota, Purdue, Illinois, Rutgers, Maryland. Maybe there are some schools that did not want to have their games, any of their games, go on a streaming platform at Amazon in 2024. Maybe they said, no, we got such a great deal with these 16 schools. We just captured the Los Angeles market. Let's just hold off. Let's just see what happens. We don't have the money. They're not offering enough money to go for Oregon and Washington at 80% share. So let's hold off on it. Maybe things have gotten to the point where it's so bad out in the Pac-12 TV negotiations that Washington and Oregon would settle for 50% share. 50% share, but they would get fully invested in the Big Ten network right away, which adds value. And of course, they would be in the conference. They would be in the conference for the great gold rush of 2026. They would be in the room to be able to decide the future of college football. There would be two more schools that were for sure would be in the room to vote on the future, to have their voice heard as part of the Big Ten Conference. That's all worth it. That's all worth it for Oregon and Washington. And of course, and I'll get to your comments in a minute here. Of course, we've heard of this Big Ten scheduling problem, right? They still haven't figured out what they're going to do, the 3 permanent rivals for those 16 schools. They put it off once again. And I had an episode saying, holy smokes, the same guy, the same B-Team associate. If you missed that episode, I think it was our second to the last one we had before we went on vacation, maybe episode 158, where the same exact person who gave us the absolute correct information on who was going to play who during the pandemic season, what were the 2 crossover games going to be for each Big Ten school. He absolutely nailed it 3 days before it was officially released, when no one else had that information. Nobody else had it. We reported it on Minnesota 247. That exact same person is telling us that they should have this figured out. The scheduling should have been figured out, even though there's arguments, because the Big Ten built in the process already. They already have a built-in process to get through those issues, a voting process. You rank your preferred, each school would rank their preferred permanent rival list 1 through 5. The Big Ten comes out with the certain options. I don't know how many of them. And then you go vote on it and bam, you've got your permanent rival list for each school. The process was built out. And then in this last winter meeting, the Big Ten did not pull the trigger on a process that they created over the last couple months. And I ask you why. Is it because they're still going through this? Are we going to add Oregon and Washington at 50% share? We don't want to do the Michael Scott at the office. Snip, snap, snip, snap, snip, snap. And of course, I came out, don't take this tweet seriously, but, you know, if you want to solve the scheduling issues of the permanent rivals for each school, well, why not this? 377, 10 conference games. Remember, we reported here at Peek Around the Corner, Big Ten is still possibly looking at 10 conference games. It's in PJ Flex, the head coach of the Minnesota Golden Gophers. It's in his contract. 9 conference games versus 10 conference games. In his bonus part of his contract, an incentive part of his contract, his agent with Mark Coyle, the athletic director, they've got a 9 conference game portion of the contract, and just in case they go to 10 games, They have the 10 conference games part of the contract. So, here we go. Oregon, Washington, UCLA, USC, they've got their 3 permanent rivals in that 14 pod. Minnesota, Wisconsin, Iowa, Nebraska, all those teams have their 3 permanent rivals in their 14 pod. Iowa, Purdue, Northwestern, Illinois, all those schools have their 3 permanent rivals in that 14 pod. And then those last 6 teams, Michigan State would play Penn State, Michigan, Rutgers, Michigan, Ohio State, Michigan State, Rutgers. Ohio State would play Michigan, Penn State, Maryland. Penn State would play Michigan State, Ohio State, Maryland. Rutgers would play Maryland, Michigan State, Michigan. Maryland would play Rutgers, Penn State, Ohio State. And those rival games at the end of the year, Oregon versus Oregon, Washington. UCLA would play USC. Minnesota would play Wisconsin. Iowa, Nebraska. Indiana, Purdue. Northwestern, Illinois. Michigan State, Penn State. Michigan, Ohio State. Rutgers, Maryland. And there it is. I think it solves a lot of issues. Okay, let's get to your comments. Let's get to your phone calls. You've heard me babble enough. I've got this bad cold, so let's get to it. And then we'll get to your comments here shortly. Your phone calls shortly. Thank you, Bruce Harris, for your generosity. Appreciate it so much for your super chat, helping us keep the lights on. Nathan Brown, let's go. Flugs, let's do this thing. Got to be the best part of my day, Flug Empire. Thank you so kindly. I had so many wonderful comments during this week here on vacation. People ready to go. A lot of things going on. Of course, Motivision. No future Big Ten expansion without Notre Dame. Maybe. Maybe not. The Pac-12 end is near. West Virginia guy. That's not what Colin Cowherd says. There are rumors galore. Absolutely. Rumors galore. Craig is back. Smash that like button. Please smash that like button. Tell me about some good coffee, Greg. Absolutely. Check the link at the description box below the video. Give this coffee a try. Where the heck is Rebecca? Go Huskies. You're showing your pro Big 12 bias, Nick Rowland. Well, I tell you what. For those Big 12 people in the chat who have been following me at Flag Empire for years, I am not pro Big 12. There is no conference in this country that I have been more, what I would consider accurate, but for many Big 12 fans, ruthless. I've been very ruthless on the Big 12. I called them the horse and buggy conference for years. I would like to think I'm not pro-bias on anybody, but of course I'm human, so I would be lying if I said that. But Big 12, What I am pro biases right now. I'm all on Brett Yormark. He's given that conference an opportunity to ensure themselves to be in the room for the great gold rush of 2026. Brett Yormark has given those universities in that conference a golden opportunity to be in that room to decide what the future of college football is going to be in 2026 and beyond. So yes, I am pro Brett Yormark. Now, if he screws up, if he does something stupid, I'm going to call him out on it. But give me this, Nick Rowland, and give me this for the rest of you all in the chat room. On October 30th, episode 83 at Peek Around the Corner, when that deal was struck, when Brett Yormark did that deal, We did not say here at Peek Around the Corner, oh my goodness, he should have waited. He's leaving money on the table. Oh no. We didn't do that. We did the opposite. We said, oh my goodness, the guy struck gold. He came and cut in front of the Pac-12. He took the best exposure windows that were left. The deal is not going to get better months down the road. We talked about the media market shrinking way back then here at Peek Around the Corner. When other people were writing articles and going and tweeting about how Brett Yormark just screwed up, we were praising him and we said, no, he did not screw up. We didn't wait 4 months to flip the script, to flip the story, and then pretend that we never said what we said 4 months ago. No, we praised Brett Yormark then. We praise him now for what he's doing. They've given themselves an opportunity to solidify themselves even more with those four corner schools. It may or may not happen, but Brett Yormark has given the Big 12 an opportunity. Timing is everything. Everything in life. Brett Yormark knew the time was right to get in, move that schedule up for negotiations inside the exclusive windows of Fox Sports and ESPN. He knew to come all the way up to negotiate and then to actually strike the deal. And now he's given himself an opportunity to take two or more of those four corner schools. He's given the Big 12 an opportunity to get Gonzaga in the house, to help them with that fourth time window in basketball, which is probably going to become more valuable as the years go on. So yes, I am pro Brett Yormark. No doubt about that. I am guilty as I sit here today. Matthew Farmer, Pac is in big trouble. Kalen DeBoer hinted at something yesterday during his press conference. He basically said, look, what did he say? We're in a good spot. We're in a good spot to compete, but if we have to go somewhere else, I can't quite remember what he said, but basically, yeah, he hinted at something. No question about it. Thank you, Ryan Thomas, for your super chat. I appreciate it. Canzano needs an intervention. Just delusional. I don't want to jump on anybody on the show. That's not why we created this show. I did read his last article. I'm just going to say that he is I would say, again, he keeps bringing up there are forces that are interfering with the Pac-12, getting a deal done. Be careful, be wary of what you're listening to. Yeah, that stuff, that is that has absolutely no value. And it's not true. The rest of his stuff, it's either his opinion or he has certain sources telling him this information, and it's just different than the information that we are receiving. But let's come on. Let's be honest here. When Pete Thamel says something, he's not pushing some sort of agenda. He really isn't, man. He is as good as you possibly can be at the profession that he works in. Pete Thamel. Brett McMurphy, same way. You can agree with them, disagree with them, but he is not trying to push a Big 12 agenda. Yeah, he's Oklahoma State alumni. He's not pushing an agenda. The Athletic is not pushing an agenda. Dennis Dawes not pushing it. Yeah, they have their biasness, but they're all singing from the same songbook. They're not all being paid off. They're not all being paid off by some agenda. So I'll just leave it at that. But thank you, Ryan, for your donation. Appreciate it. Cowherd has sources at Fox, at Big Ten in Washington. He probably checked in all three or two of those three. Absolutely. The morning of June 30th, when it was announced, when John Wilner broke the story that UCLA and USC were joining the Big Ten, Cowherd had that story as well. He didn't put it out there, but he had the story. He tweeted some hints. He had the story. I don't... Look, we said this. Again, we at Peek Around the Corner, we have failed, we have tried, but we have failed to get that little bit of nugget from our Money Perch sources to say Oregon and Washington, the Big Ten, are in talks right now, tonight, da-da-da-da-da. We don't have it. If I had it, I'd send it your way. We don't have it. But Pete Thamel says the door is open. And now you have Cowherd, what he said. And we know that Washington and Oregon were going to keep swinging away. They're going to keep swinging away. They're not, and back in episode 52, the Oregon Money Perch says we're not signing any grant of rights that has any real teeth to it. And ever since episode 52, which was a while ago, months ago, how many reports have you seen saying that Oregon and Washington are not going to sign a grant of rights that has any teeth to it? And we haven't even gotten to the FSU story. So much to get through. I'm just going to put this out in FSU. We're at the middle of the beginning of the story. We're not at the beginning of the beginning. We're at the middle of the beginning. This story has a long ways to go. On December 26th at Peek Around the Corner, we almost broke what you heard this last week. For those who are new to the show, December 26th, we were asked to stand down. We stood down. The real story out there is who's going to pull the trigger on challenging this? Who's going to pull the trigger on challenging the Gore? When are they going to pull the trigger on challenging the Gore? And how are they going to pull the trigger on challenging the Gore? And we're not going to be the ones that break the story. We are working on it. We are working on it. And I think you'll find out why later. But we're not going to be the ones that break the story. But we are going to drop you hints from time to time, little pieces of nuggets, just like we did on December 26th. This is not by accident. This is not by accident. What Florida State's doing right now, talking in public, is not by accident. None of this is by accident. This is all cloak and dagger. It's all cloak and dagger. We told you December 26th and some days after that these schools are not going to be working together. It's not going to be collusion. They're going to be working independently of each other. And now you're hearing reporting of that, right? We told you back in December 26th and the days following that nobody has seen the grant of rights. The real grant of rights, the extended grant of rights from 2027, 2026. And now you see reportings of the Athletic and other people saying that exact same thing. So we're giving you a peek around the corner as much as we possibly can. And we're going to be continuing to do that for you as best we can on the Florida State story. Okay. I think we better open up the phone lines. A lot of comments. Opie, so much. Thank you so much for your continued generosity to the show. After a week of PATC withdrawing pains, I'm much better now after hearing those sweet pipes ringing in my ears. Now if I can just do something about the cloak and dagger problem. Can't really help you with that. There's lots of cloak and dagger going on right now. Lots of it. And it's not going to stop anytime soon. Primarily because of the great gold rush of 2026. Also, Johnson versus NCAA. The Supreme Court. A lot of stuff going on. A lot of great comments. Lots of great comments. I'm just going to be posting them up here. What's going to happen to Cal and Stanford? Well, if there is an implosion, I'm not Well, we'll see. I don't have the answer for that. Yun, thanks for coming in the chat. I do not have the answer for that. I really have to be careful about how much I speculate, because when people take my out in public, because when people take my speculation and they mix it up with my intel that we get. So I leave that up to you guys. I give you what I believe is happening through intel, and I'll speculate a little bit on it. But Cal and Stanford, I do not know what would happen to them if there's an implosion of two of the four corner schools going to the Big 12, and possibly Oregon and Washington going to the Big 10. I don't know. I do not know. Bill G, thanks for coming in. Florida State not going anywhere soon. I agree with that. No one in the ACC is going anywhere soon. That's not the story. That's not the story. The story is that there is diverse opinions among those who have read the true extended ACC grant of rights. There is a diverse opinion on how, if they could successfully challenge that grant of rights. There is a diverse opinion. It's not just monolithic. They're not all walking out of the vault to where that is stored and saying, yep, this is done. Can't do it. Florida State Board of Trustees says, when asked about the grant of rights, he says, we've got that handled. I'll you know what? I'll push the story a little bit forward, because we've been working on this story for quite a while, right? The first phone call we got from the Money Perch Florida State, as we announced in December 26th, was December 4th. There are three options. Three options right now that Florida State can choose from. They believe to challenge the Gore, to challenge the grant of rights. Two of the options, they do not have control their own destiny on. Something else would have to happen that's outside of their purview. The third option is they control their own destiny. But we don't believe there's going to, if Florida State challenges, they pull the trigger, or if someone else goes out there first, it's not going to happen until at least the fall of 2023 or the winter and spring of 2024. So definitely no one's going to leave anytime soon And if someone challenges the grant of rights, that's going to be a protracted battle. So I absolutely agree with Bill G. Big Ten John Famlor says the Big Ten blatantly has zero interest in adding Oregon or Washington. The length of the next contract, they just don't. Oregon and Washington would take 1/4 share, let alone 1/2, but still no offer. Lee says that Florida State and Clemson they believe they both have found a loophole. Check Twitter messages, West Virginia guy. I'll check it in a second. Okay, let's get to your phone calls. We haven't had any phone calls here in the last, how many days has it been? 8, 9, 10 days. Let's get this thing going. Again, phone number 763-260-1333. Call in. You can talk about anything you want in college football.
Call from
Ryan Martin.
Ryan Martin, the floor is yours, sir. What do you got to say for yourself?
Oh, not a whole heck of a lot, man. How the heck are you?
Doing good. Just got back from vacation up by the border of Canada and Minnesota. Got myself a nice cold. So, but I'm hanging in there.
I feel you, man. I feel you. I don't have much tonight, but I can say that based on some of my conversations with some of my friends in Stillwater, that the mood in the Big 12 is good. There is a lot to be optimistic about. There's a lot to be excited about. And I think that for a lot of us, we feel like Brett Yormark has turned this conference completely around. That Bowlesby did what he could to stabilize it, and now Brett has come in, taken the reins, and has a vision for what we can be. And that the only other thing I'll say, because I'll get in trouble if I say more than this, there are some flames to the smoke about some of these things that are happening. Probably not going to happen soon. I don't think anybody wants to upset the apple cart going into the tournament, the NCAA tournament, but I would not be shocked if things start to turn, things start to happen after we get done with March Madness this year. I think that's the new time frame. If Klyavkov doesn't pull a rabbit out of his hat, that is. At least those are the things I'm hearing.
Yeah. Again, I've heard this stated before and by national writers, right? No one's going to upset the apple cart. No one's going to turn over the dinner tables for this week because Pac-12 basketball tournament, right? Conference tournament.
Yeah.
I'm hearing the opposite. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I feel most comfortable when we're the only ones saying something though, because they need to see okay, let me put it to you this way. They better see an offer this week. They better have a package in front of them. If they have a package in front of them, according to our guy, Arizona State, then then they can go through the process of hashing it out. He calls it hashing it out for the next couple weeks. But if they don't get anything in front of them this week, conference tournament be damned, I think things are going to be tipped over.
You know, that matches some of the stuff that I've heard too. I didn't want to go as far as saying that, but I know the general thought is that they don't expect anything to happen until after the tournament this year. That there might be rumblings. Somebody might even announce on the opposite side of the table that they're leaving, but nobody's going to formally announce anything on the Big 12 side until after the NCAA tournament. I may be wrong on that, but that just seems to be what the status quo is for the moment. So,
okay. All right.
That's all I got today.
Thank you for the phone call.
I will be, if things do pop off, I'll be popping in with a special super chat song request, since we like to turn this into Flug Hour karaoke hour every now and then.
Yes, that's fine. I still have to sing Rock Chalk. I still have to sing that Division III song, which I can't find on YouTube. Someone's got to send it to me. I can't sing the night because I've got a really bad cold. But yes, thanks for holding off a couple days. Appreciate it.
You're welcome, man.
Have
a good one.
Appreciate it.
All right. Bye.
Thanks for the super chat, Opie, once again. Appreciate your generosity. You keep helping us keep the lights on in this channel. I would think that ESPN would eat the money now as the future's SEC, because if they piss off SFU, North Carolina, Miami, Clemson, they could all go to the Big Ten.
Call from
Ryan Thomas.
Ryan Thomas is in the house. The floor is yours, sir. What do you got to say?
Well, first of all, welcome back from your trip, Greg.
Thank you.
We're glad you had a good time, and you'll have to share the stories later on. Hopefully, as someone said in the comments, thankfully no weather balloon aliens came and got you. Yeah. But first of all, I want to start off by saying that if the Pac-12 had any kind of deal that was close to the money of the Big 12, they would have taken it a long time ago. And based on reading and seeing what's out there, I get the distinct impression that one of two things is possible. One, it's either the exposure part of the deal is so bad that Kliavkoff can't really get anyone on board with it, or two, just he's asking too much money, and the net, he keeps pushing on basically keeps kicking a dead horse, and he's asking for more than what he's going to get. I just think anything that turns out with 75% streaming, as you've seen, I think Dennis Dodd reported that. I mean, that would be a complete disaster. And I just, at this point, the money's probably not even be close, because as I pointed out in the comment section, if you're a media partner and you know that Oregon and Washington are actively trying to get out of the conference and won't even be there, what incentive do you have to pay top dollar? Those are basically the two brands that give any, with all due respect to everybody else in the Pac, you take out Oregon and Washington, you're on par with the AAC. And you take out Oregon and Washington, it's gone. And I just, if those two schools don't want to commit to any sort of tough, serious grant of rights or want a loosey-goosey grant of rights, I just don't see how any media partner is willing to pay any kind of money. And that may be the problem. That very well could be the problem right now.
Yeah, it could be.
And
yeah.
And I think at some point, I agree with you. I mean, they need to see hard numbers this week, and the fact that he hasn't given them hard numbers, or if he hasn't put anything in front of them, I mean, it tells me that he's not playing a very good hand. He's got a bad hand. He's a horrible card player, and I think that at this point, I would not be surprised to see, and I know people don't want things to interfere with March Madness, but to be honest with you, this transcends it, because it's basically an existential crisis for many of these schools. And it's either leave or be left behind. And honestly, I mean, could Washington and Oregon cobble together 4 or 5 more years, or 3 or 4 more years with a Pac-12 that's basically backfilled with Mountain West schools? Yeah, they could, because Oregon and Washington ultimately would finally get unequal revenue sharing and would just basically bleed the conference dead. But at this point, I think that this is just, I have a hard time seeing them surviving. Just the leadership is so poor. And to be kind of honest, the fact that you see people out there coming up with all these wild, crazy conspiracy theories that somehow people like me and others are these, paid Big 12 operatives who are undermining them at every deal. I mean, at what point, Pac-12 fans, and I would say Pac-12 presidents and George Kliavkoff, are you going to stop blaming others and maybe pull up that mirror and take a look into it yourself? Because, when you start blaming outside noise and these paranoid things, things like 12 and on or whatever, it just, that distracts from the real issue. And the real issue is for the most part, the West Coast has big markets, but these are all pro sports cities, Greg. Pro sports cities, and they're growing cities, but most of these people didn't go to those schools, and they don't follow those schools. And it doesn't matter how big of a market you're in if you don't have a fan base in that market. And they know that. The media partners know that. And I think it's just they haven't quite connected, and it's like they're in denial. But to be honest, Utah, Washington, and Oregon are the 3 fan bases that actually show up to at least football games. Now, Utah is an awful fan base when it comes to basketball, which was kind of sad because 25 years ago they had a great basketball program. But, you got to show up to the games, and you got to care about this, because Burke Menges from ESPN said that they don't spend time thinking about markets. They focus on matchups and rivalries and brands, and that's how ESPN operates. Now, Fox cares about markets, but they're not in this. They're not in this negotiation. So ESPN has already blatantly said what they value, and if you're not bringing what they value, don't expect much money. And I think it's pretty much over. I think Oregon and Washington are content to either, go on in survival mode with, basically a backfilled conference and jump when they get their chance, or they'll get into the Big Ten at a discount rate, if they finally come crawling. But at this point, if you're if you're Arizona, Colorado, Utah, or Arizona State, if you don't jump at this point, you're stupid, because there is no landing spot. Because it's very clear to me that Washington and Oregon have no commitment to that conference post 2031. The fact that Cal used this whole Cal Board of Regents thing as a ploy to blackmail their way into the Big Ten with Stanford and Oregon and Washington, as your ASU Money Perch friend said, I mean, the fact that they were willing to turn around and screw the rest over, the first chance they got, at some point you got to have to kind of realize that these guys aren't your friends. And, if you want to survive, and if you want to actually be in a good shape and have a stable situation in a good competitive conference, you gotta put aside it's, to tradition be damned. You got to put it aside, and you have to basically make that move. And if you don't, you deserve to be left in obscurity. And that's all I got tonight, Greg. I'm excited to see. My Big 12 add some nice, culturally good-fitting schools like Utah, ASU, and Arizona. It's going to be great in basketball. Looking forward to that. And all I can say is to all the people who have hated on me for the comments I've made on Twitter, I hope you enjoy a nice big slice of crow, folks. Thanks a lot.
Okay,
I'm out.
Thanks for the call. Thank you, Danielle, for your super chat. Once again, thank you for your friendship. Your incredible generosity to the show is so appreciated. Thank you, Danielle, so much. Thank you for letting me call you this week. Appreciate it. Wow. Unbelievable. Thank you, Danielle. Great call. Thank you, Matthew Carlson. Appreciate it, good sir. Thank you for your super chat, helping us keep the lights on. Thank you so very much. Monovision. Don't sell yourself short, Greg. You can't sing even without a really bad cold. Wow. Thank you so much for your generosity, Monovision. Appreciate it. Thank you for all the donations, all the great comments, all the great support. I do want to get to, before we get, phone lines are closed just for a second. I do want to get to a couple comments here. Now, I lost, the comment. Well, the comment was up there saying that the Monty Show is saying that the deal is for $22 million per year per school. That's the deal. I don't know the Monty. I've watched them a couple times. People send me their YouTube. They seem knowledgeable. They're entertaining. Now, they did say a few days ago that the deal was done and that they're working on the grant of rights. We don't believe that was accurate. The deal is not done, and they're not working on the grant of rights because they haven't even received the offer. When somebody says, see, this is the... When somebody says that the deal is for $22 million a year per school, or 25, or 26 to 27, that means that the entire package of Amazon and ESPN, or Amazon, Apple, and ESPN, or maybe just Amazon and Apple TV, or maybe just Apple TV, whatever it is, that means the whole package has been presented to the presidents, and it says, this is the offer, right? With the media companies going back and forth with the commissioner and the executive committee. Here you go, 10 presidents. Here is the offer. What do you think? Let's hash it out. It is for this amount of money. It's for this much linear exposure. It's this much streaming exposure. This is the offer. And according to what we've heard, they haven't got that offer yet. They don't know what that looks like, not into its entirety. So it isn't, I don't know how else to say it, but it isn't, they might know how much ESPN is willing to offer for this amount of games, maybe one game a week, or Amazon. But to have it all together, to exactly know how much you would make per year per school, how much the conference would make per year, how many years that deal is, they haven't received that offer yet. They haven't seen the entire numbers yet. So we're taking it differently than I guess other people are. We're being told by the guy who was in the... We're being told by the guy who told us the day after the Pac-12 meetings was over that Arizona State was frustrated, showed their displeasure. Remember all that? And then that was reported later on by other media outlets. He's telling us they need to see the numbers this week. They need to see the numbers, and then we'll work on it. So I don't believe in this. I don't believe, with all due respect to everybody else out there, I don't believe they have this entire deal in front of them, or at least last Thursday night, which was 2 nights ago, that they got the deal in front of them saying, oh, it's for $28 million a year, 6-year deal, da-da-da-da-da. Don't think they even have that. Or they didn't have it Thursday night. Opie, I don't understand. Thank you for the super chat, Opie. Appreciate it. Once again, thank you for your continuous generosity. I'm very humbled by you, Opie. Thank you so much. I don't understand. If ESPN says they want to pay for G5 schools for the Big 12, then why would they do it for the PAC? I don't know if they'll do it for the PAC. I don't know. Again, we go back to the Arizona State letter. Arizona State is not on board with SMU. What is in it for us, they said. What is in it for us? They're not on board. This was weeks ago. They would be for San Diego State, but they need to know what's in it for them. They haven't seen, and now what day are we? March 4th? March 4th. That was all the way back to January 31st. It's March 4th. And they still don't know, they still haven't seen the total offer. And they have to see it this week. If they don't see it this week, according to the Arizona State Money Perch, who's been dead on this whole thing, says we're ready to bolt. It's not just Arizona State, it's Arizona, according to this guy. They're ready to bolt. The Arizona schools are ready to bolt. I know there's been reports out there about Colorado and Utah. They're already gone. That was in the UCLA 247. We don't believe there's anyone gone yet. They want to all see the offer. That's the problem. The offer hasn't been shown to them yet. I don't know. I hope I'm getting through. They want to see an offer. They want to see what's the best offer, because the offers going forward from now are not going to get better. So let's see it now. Let's hash it out. Let's see if it could work or not work, but let's see the offer. I don't know. Great question, Opie. I don't know if ESPN is willing to spend any money anywhere anymore. If Oregon and Washington, let's just say, we're just speculating, if Oregon and Washington go to the Big Ten and the Big Ten goes to 10 conference games, you have so much more conference games added on, I don't think ESPN is going to even be a part of that. I think they're still not going to be a part of the new Big Ten. I think it would have to be Amazon coming in. But thanks, Opie, for the donation. Appreciate it. Jared Jones, Buckeye, Greg, please don't go on vacation again for a while. 8 days is too long without PATC live show. Great show as always. Thank you so very much. Thank you for the donation. Thank you for those kind words. Appreciate it. Okay, phone lines are back open. Phone lines are back open. It is 763-760-1333. John Coy, how long will the PAC schools wait before they say enough already? According to the information we received, they got to see the numbers this week. Let's see the numbers, and then we'll hash it out. The conference isn't going to be saved this week, but it could implode this week if they don't see the numbers. Now, it sounds like George Kliavkoff is going to present something to these schools. He has to. Best offer. Best offer. Let's go.
Call from
Rebecca, go Huskies.
Rebecca is in the house. Go Huskies. The floor is yours, Rebecca. What do you got to say?
Well, I got to say, Greg, everybody's like, you've become like a drug for some of these people. Like, you're a controlled substance now. You can't go on vacation, apparently.
Well, I think I take that to the heart because I love doing this show. My wife loves all of this. We love college football. I appreciate all the wonderful comments. I appreciate you calling, Rebecca. I received a lot of great comments this week. It's just energized us some more. I have a really bad cold. We came home, but me and the wife looked at each other. We said, we got to do it. We got to come on live. There's so much stuff going on. Plus, we had new information. We have to get it out there. So I appreciate your kind words, Rebecca. Again, sorry to take up your time. The floor is yours.
Oh, you're good, Greg. No, I just it's been a wild week. I kind of like stayed out of it, just followed along. I mean, I'm a Husky fan. We're just kind of we I don't want to be the one. We kind of have some options here.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I mean, I just there's a few things I want to clarify. One, everybody keeps throwing out this like $22 million deal, right?
Well, I don't. I don't. But go ahead.
Right?
Yeah.
You know what the Pac-12 is making next year on their media deal? It's $21 million.
Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah.
Like
if you throw in all that other stuff, it's the low 30s for conference payouts. Yep.
Yeah,
yep.
Correct. So if we're just talking about that first chunk, because that's all you kind of like, you can kind of guess, because Tier 2 is owned by the Pac-12 with the Pac-12 network completely. So they own that. So, but they're already at $21 million next year. So does anybody think Washington or Oregon would be like, oh yeah, we're cool with being at $22 million? They would have already left. The number has to be higher. Like, it's just a common sense thing. The number must be higher. Otherwise, they would have all bounced. And they've all heard a number. Like, we can confirm they basically have all heard a number. What that number is that I think is the guess. The three CEOs, they've seen the number. They 100% have seen the number, and Washington CEO is in charge.
I think they've seen separate numbers. I think they've seen what ESPN would be willing to offer for this type. Amazon, what they would be offering for this type of content. Apple TV. But I don't think they've seen the total compact package in its entirety. They haven't seen that offer yet.
Correct. So it's like that's where that $22 million is probably coming from. One offer. Like, it's just, that's one. The component will be who's the secondary partner? We know ESPN wants it. Like, they pretty much do. They just don't want to pay a ton for it. And in reality, you look at what ESPN is doing now, and they're reshuffling, and they just let people go, and they just brought on a brand new person, and apparently they're doing this like weird new streaming thing. They want to do they're going to have their own streaming network now, and it's not ESPN Plus. I had to like really read into that to even figure out what it was. Because I was like, you already have ESPN Plus. So, and they have ESPN 3.
Yeah, I don't think they're looking into it. It's just a way for them to be a hub of all or some of other streaming platforms. I think it's much to do about nothing, but we'll see.
Yeah, we'll see. I'm just like, it's just something to kind of like just keep our eyes on and just see how it develops, especially because they just hired somebody to really kind of like look into it. But I'm sitting here and I'm watching XFL football on FX, of all things, because ESPN broadcasts now on FX. But like, they'll figure it out. But I just want people to like, it's like, I heard a caller say like Pac-12 fans don't go to games, and it's like, no, Pac-12 fans at certain schools don't go to games, like UCLA. Not a lot of fans at their games. Cal and Stanford, we know, have issues, but Cal and Stanford fans aren't dumb. They're not going to go and pay for a bad product on the field. But they still, when they play each other, it's packed. But like Oregon State, for example, I don't know if anybody realizes, but Oregon State only had half their stadium that was available to them this year because they're remodeling the other half.
Yeah.
So you only saw one side for that reason. They never showed the other side because it was just on a remodel. But they were still selling out the games. And Washington State is a small stadium, but it was still roughly around 30,000 people, which is 5,000 short of what they actually hold. And people are going to Pac-12 games. People are watching Pac-12 games. Somebody went and looked at the numbers in the Pac-12 over 10 years, removing the two LA schools and then the Big 12, removing Oklahoma and Texas. They did look at the numbers in the Pac-12 schools that are currently remaining, actually outdrew the current Big 12 schools across the board on average in terms of ratings and things. So it's just important to like stop. I'm at this point where I'm like, we need to stop comparing the two conferences, right? One's going to die. It'll probably be the PAC because Washington and Oregon will get poached. Like, it's just going to happen. They're going to leave. If the four corner schools are going to go, I'm just at this point where it's like, we know Arizona State's upset. They've been trying. I told you a month or two ago that they were trying to get other schools on board to kind of push this along a little bit.
Yeah.
I think we'll see. The presidents meet this week. I think they meet on Tuesday or Wednesday. They do meet. Like, they're actually sitting down with George Kliavkoff this week.
Yep.
He has a press conference this week.
Yep.
So things are going to get asked. Things are going to come out. We just need to, like, Brett McMurphy got into a source-off about Ion TV. Nobody else is reporting Ion TV but Brett McMurphy. And it's like, I don't know. It's like there's so much information, and I'm starting to think that even the national reporters are getting mixed. They're definitely getting mixed information, and the truth's going to be somewhere in the middle. But I do have a question for you, Greg.
Yeah.
It's a good question here. If you were the president of an Oregon State or a Washington State, how concerned would you be that your in-state rivals are potentially eyeballing anywhere but here, knowing that you're the two smallest schools in the conference and that your options are going to be very limited if something does occur?
I would be so concerned that I would have had emissaries representing me talking to somebody representing Brett Yormark months ago. And I'm guessing that probably happened.
That probably happened.
But
Yeah.
again,
I'm thinking.
this unfortunately for Oregon State and Washington State, I don't know if it's rule number 4 or rule number 5. We're going to have to put this together at some point, but a rule of realignment is, it starts from the top to the bottom, right? There's a domino effect.
Yep.
And so Brett Yormark, he's going to take that information in if it happened, but he's not going to act on it until it starts from the top. So Oregon State and Washington State are in a tough spot. I will say this. I still believe this. I'm probably the only one who believes this. But let's just speculate and let's just say Oregon and Washington joins the Big Ten as on a discount rate. 4 corner schools go to the Big 12. So then you have California, Stanford, Oregon State, and Washington State. And I think they rebuild the Pac-12. I think they poach from the Mountain West. I think the Pac-12 still exists, at least for 2024 and 2025, because the playoff managers, that committee, they have it written in. It's in the contract. It's done deal. It's this is how much, whatever that amount is going to be coming in for the playoff money, 80% of it's going to go to Power 5 schools, 20% of it's going to go to G5 schools. The autonomy 5 is still going to remain. It's going to still remain up until at least 2026. So I think that gives Oregon State and Washington State and Stanford and California, I think they're going to have the leverage to rebuild the conference. It might be short term, it might be long term, but I think they're going to have the leverage over the Mountain West. The one point of this, what I'm saying though, that could go belly up on me is what if the networks say, no, that's it. You're going to have to go to the Mountain West. It's over. But that's my feelings on it. I do think Oregon State and Washington State are still going to have an opportunity. If the worst case happens, if total implosion happens in the Pac-12 in the next couple weeks, I still think there's a chance that Oregon State, Washington State can hang on to at least some part of Power 5 athletics for at least for the next couple years.
Yeah, I would agree with you there. I will leave you with this one last thought, though.
Got it.
And it's a good question. This is a good one for everybody, even like Big 12 fans. Let's say ESPN and let's say obviously Fox says, okay, we're going to give you guys more money to add these schools, right? If they only give the okay for 4 schools and you're the Big 12 and you have your choice between Washington, Oregon, Stanford, Cal, and then the 4 corners, where does your mark go? Washington and Oregon would be a package with Stanford and Cal. I just want people to realize that might be a thing if the 2 schools are able to convince it. So I'll leave you with that because I've heard this rumor from somebody at Washington that if they were to go, the 4 schools do want to be kept together. So anyway, I'll let you go.
Thank you.
Let's, see if anybody debates that, but go Huskies. Can't wait for the tournament to start, and I have a feeling nothing's going to happen until a Big 12 school wins the national title because, they're probably going to win it. All right. Bye, Greg.
Okay. Bye. Thanks. Okay. I closed down the phone lines for just a second. I want to get to this Colorado State thing. I forgot to bring it up. I see some comments. Colorado State was brought up by John Canzano as a potential expansion for the Pac-12. Fort Collins, great college town. Colorado State, really, really good research university. New stadium, 35,000, perfect for modern day college football, for the market size that they're in. Tremendous. Their football program has been down for a few years. But does it make any sense for the Pac-12 to have Colorado State as a potential expansion candidate? Nothing against Colorado State. I can see them being, well, before Brett Yormark turned the conference around, I could have seen Colorado State as a potential Big 12 candidate. Colorado State as a potential Pac-12 expansion candidate? Why? That does nothing. For the Pac-12. It does nothing for Washington. It does nothing for Oregon. It does nothing for Arizona. It does nothing for Arizona State. It does nothing for the conference. What does it do for Utah? It doesn't. It's comments like that. I mean, I'm trying to be kind. Fort Collins is awesome. Absolutely, the school's great. But they won't even be a candidate. They can't possibly be a candidate. That doesn't. Yeah, they're a research university. Absolutely. Again, I'm not ripping on the school, but you're looking at San Diego State because you need a Southern California. You need to be represented in Southern California for just the recruiting itself, for the market itself. You've already got the state. You've already got Colorado. Colorado State doesn't nothing. You're just duplicating the market, pretty much. Maybe not entirely, but pretty much you are. It's either that is true. Now, either that is true that they are a candidate, then I really have to just wonder what is going on with George Kliavkoff and the Pac-12 leadership. Or it's not true. And it's like, what are we doing here? I don't get it. I don't. Back to your comments, back to your phone calls. Got it, Larry Pilgrim. Appreciate it. Appreciate Super Chat. Greg, who's being sarcastic. No, I understand that. I understand that. But I was just, going back to the Canzano article, which I've done the best I could to avoid for tonight. Let's get the phone lines back open. Phone lines are back open. Again, if you're new to the channel, if you're new to college football's Peek Around the Corner, we can pop up at any time. So please subscribe to our channel. We can go live at any time. We went live tonight at what time was it? 6:44? Just an odd time. Just an odd time out of the blue. We have episodes 3 or 4 times a week. We talk about everything college football. We've been on this Pac-12 story for a while because it is a huge story with huge implications. So subscribe to our channel. Smash that like button.
From
Moen.
Moen Vision. Mr. Buckeye's in the house. The floor is yours.
Well, first things first, Greg. It's great to see you back from vacation.
Nice to be back.
Everybody's liver's got to take a nice break for the week.
Yeah.
And then you had to start this show with all the cloak and daggers and undid all that good work. But to answer your last question, the only reason the PAC would look at Colorado State as an expansion candidate is if Colorado leaves. They only work as a replacement for Colorado. It only works as an attempt to garner some of the Denver market back. And I think it's odd that the timing of that news came out literally hours after the timing of the Four Corner schools talking to the Big 12 came out.
The Athletic article came out, then hours later, this article came out. Yep.
Right. And there were even more PAC expansion candidates. There's really no need for more than 2 expansion candidates unless you know that you're going to have people leaving your conference. That's the only reason for more than 2. The Pac-12 is not adding 4 teams. If everybody's sticking together, the Pac-12 is not adding 4 teams.
You would think
they're not diluting their payouts anymore.
Yeah.
It's just not going to happen. I'm still keeping my fingers crossed on Notre Dame, but I do have a fear, and I think I've mentioned this before, that the Big might take the Pottery Barn route of it. You broke it, you bought it. I could see people being swayed if the Four Corners leave, going on and just moving to 20 and taking Oregon, Washington, Cal, and Stanford.
Yeah.
Just secure that West Coast, bring them all in on partial shares, make them the late night time slot for ESPN, maybe throw a Friday package on there,
Yeah, I don't see California and Stanford at this time. I definitely don't see California, but I don't see Stanford. I understand. I understand all the, there's a lot of Oregon's not a Big Ten school. Oregon's not this or that. I get it. They barely do any research. They barely have any research expenditures. I get it. But they are a brand multiplier. They bring in the eyeballs. And if you are going to go and expand, and you are trying to get a media company to pay for that expansion, you are going to need, Oregon brings in the eyeballs. If you're going to be a streaming, if let's say Amazon's talking with the Big Ten once again and saying, yeah, we'll throw out such and such millions of dollars. You can add 2 schools. We just want to get into the college football space. We're willing to overpay. Amazon's going to want Oregon in that deal, right?
Oh, absolutely. And I think the other partners would as well. Fox would pay for it.
So there it is. Anyways, I'm sorry to steal your time. Go ahead.
No, well, the question is at that point, though, is do they get enough votes? Do the small schools have their assurances that they will not be pushed further down the pecking order in terms of the OTA broadcasts?
Well, they would. They would be. Minnesota would be. Purdue would be. Illinois would be. There's a Indiana would be. But in that instance, any deal would have to be revenue neutral or revenue positive for them to accept that. If I'm representing the University of Minnesota, which I should be, I would want some guarantees that I would only be on that streaming platform once a year, right? Once a year. That's it. You get us one time.
Well, that might be the selling point for Washington and Oregon as well. Just Washington and Oregon might have to play more of those games on that streaming platform at least through this media deal.
Yeah.
You know, it might be they might have to play a minimum of 2 games each on that platform where everybody else has to play 1.
Yeah.
You know, but I think it's inching closer. I
think it is.
There's just too much smoke. There's too much smoke.
I think it is. And I'll throw it back at you as a Buckeye. Ohio State. I mean, do you really want... Now, you see what the Pac-12 is about to do, right? Even if they stay together, yes, Washington and Oregon, good football programs, Utah, good football programs, but now they're going to be $30 million behind the Big Ten and SEC, so they even got more of an uphill battle year in, year out, year in. Does the Buckeyes and the Nittany Lions and the Wolverines, do you really want USC and UCLA to have that incredible advantage of be the only 2 schools in the Super 2 conferences, whatever you want to call them? They have all that area out there to recruit without, they're still going to get battled by Washington and Oregon. I'm not saying they're not going to, but they're going to have more of an advantage now. Do you really want those 2 schools to be out there having all that advantage? Don't you want...
Well,
but
speaking from Ohio State perspective,
yeah,
it doesn't matter to me because we're a national brand and we'll just recruit nationally anyway. And I know that comes off as elitist.
No, I get it. I get it.
Ohio State, Ryan Day can go in there and pick out a quarterback, and Brian Hartline can go in there and pick out the best wide receiver.
Okay, maybe not the Buckeyes. Maybe Penn State, or maybe Wisconsin. A couple levels lower, like a Wisconsin, like a Nebraska. Do you really want? I mean, to me, it's like, boy, the Big Ten, I'm telling you, and don't get me wrong, the Big Ten is benefiting greatly from having USC, UCLA in the Big Ten. They're benefiting from having the city of Los Angeles be a Big Ten city. All that is great, but man, it's USC and UCLA, they are benefiting greatly. I mean, look what they're getting, Monavision. Yeah. Look what they're getting.
Well, I mean, Dante Moore flipped from Oregon to UCLA because of the exposure. Look
what the Trojans and Bruins are getting. They're going on NBC. They're going on FX. They're going on CBS. They're having a full membership of the Big Ten Network on day 1. Look at the matchups. Look at the money, and and the money is only growing more important as time goes on for all the reasons we say. So look how they're benefiting. I gotta think somebody somewhere in the Big Ten is listening to Beaker on the Corner and going, "Holy smokes! Are we gonna let them have all that? Let's have Oregon and Washington." Let them peck.
No, I agree. Yeah. I agree. But somebody has to leave first before that'll happen. I don't see Oregon and Washington leaving. Or I don't see the Big Ten offering Oregon and Washington until somebody else moves first.
What was that again?
I think if Arizona, I don't see the Big Ten offering until somebody else leaves the pack.
I don't know about that, but you may be right. I think the math has changed. Look, Oregon and Washington had preliminary talks with the Big Ten. That was reported. We also know that the Washington and Big Ten talks were pretty intense. It happened in New York City. It happened in a different city that Oregon talked with the Big Ten. We do know that Oregon and Washington, if they weren't going to get in not then, which was back between August 15th and October 15th, that they were going to keep swinging. So they received some sort of feedback from the Big Ten to keep them optimistic, which I think is going a long ways and making it more difficult for this Pac-12 deal to get done because they're not willing to sign a grant of rights that has any teeth because they received some feedback from the Big Ten that kept them optimistic. So I don't think it's a case of Big Ten waiting on anybody else. I think it might be a case of Big Ten waiting to see if Oregon and Washington will come in at such a discounted rate that now it becomes, holy cow, we can't let this go by. We're going to get them at this price for 7 years.
And for that to happen, Greg, that number has to come in so low that those other four corners.
Well, maybe it already has. Maybe it already has.
Yeah,
that's what Colin Cowherd is kind of alluding to.
Right. So I think that once that number comes in, or they have that number, I think it's going to be pretty quick. You're going to see Arizona and Colorado lead first. If not Arizona State, Colorado, and Utah all as one package. But I think Arizona and Colorado are the two most likely to leave. I mean, it just, like I said, just the way I started my phone call, Colorado State does not make sense if Colorado is still in your conference.
It doesn't.
It just doesn't.
It doesn't. It doesn't. And again, I'm going to be nice about this as much as I possibly can be, but no, I'm going to drop it. No, it doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense.
All right, Greg, I'll get off here and let somebody else have a call.
Beautiful.
And
beautiful
try not
call.
to be so elitist like us Ohio State fans are.
Yeah.
Go Buckeyes.
Go Buckeyes, and you're in a lot of trouble. Second to the last game of the season. The Buckeyes are in a lot of trouble. Laura Weiss, the only way I will pay extra on Amazon is when Tech plays Oregon and Oregon State the next 3 years. Wow. Texas Tech. Jared Jones, Big Ten needs to get into the Southeast of recruiting purposes and Southern exposure. And if they can, it won't happen for a while yet. It won't happen for a while yet.
Call from
Immaculate.
Immaculate. Brian, he's in the house. The floor is yours, sir. What do you got to say tonight?
Greg, good evening.
Good
Glad
evening.
to be talking with you. I've just calling, seen a lot of folks from the PAC who are a little worried about this, and understandably so. But first off, it's nothing personal how I live here, so it's just kind of a little crazy how things have come around. The Big 12 was supposed to be picked apart, and now all of a sudden the powers that be have decided differently.
Yeah.
But as far as what's coming first, I would say what people are not talking about is it cannot be just Washington and Oregon. They have issues at home. They cannot just leave Washington State and Oregon State in a lurch. They will have issues. So the most likely ones to leave first at this point still are the Arizona schools. The moment they lost the LA contacts, a lot of people here don't really care about the PAC a lot anymore because UCLA and USC are gone. Whether or not people believe it or not, I don't know what to tell you, but that's just a lot of what I'm hearing. It's kind of like, if we're not going to get paid and UCLA and USC aren't here, then what do we care? I mean, they're not, some people going around, well, what about research? Well, ASU, if anyone's paying attention, is flying up the boards in research, and they're doing it largely on their own. They're not, no one in the PAC is grabbing their hand and pulling them up the way, Arizona's already a well-known research school. They don't need the PAC for that. What they need are basically to get well known and to get paid.
Yeah.
ASU has a lot of kind of desire to go big time. You know, they call it the big sleeping giant.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And
Yep.
And when USC and UCLA left, sitting here in Phoenix, I said, "Oh, wow, that's going to be big for here." And it was a pretty quick change in how people around here saw that conference. So I still say, seeing Arizona talking about leaving, that was the big one. I don't think it's a big deal for Arizona State to go anywhere, whether it's the Big 12, the Big 10. Arizona State is going to be what Arizona State is no matter where they are. Arizona, on the other hand, they're kind of the ones that think more of how are we going to be viewed for this. You know, it's seen a little bit more as the academic school.
Mm-hmm.
You know, Arizona State's the 70,000 enrollment giant. I mean, they're going to be what they are. I like Arizona State for the Big Ten, and that's saying that as a Big Ten guy coming from that area long past. But chances of them getting invited probably aren't great.
Yeah.
And I don't know if people understand why this is happening, though. In 2015, the Power Five were giving autonomous voting power from the NCAA. And from that point on, they were able to pretty much do whatever they want to do. Problem is, with 5 power conferences, you don't have enough control over voting. People may not understand that.
Yeah. Yeah.
But it's just, like, if you're the Big Ten and the SEC, you're looking at, well, the PAC, the ACC, and the Big 12 could all come together and vote together, and we actually don't have a say in this. That's not acceptable to these people. And that some people might be like, that's elitist, that's whatever. Yeah, you're right, but that's their position. And so what we're seeing is kind of this decapitation scenario where they did it with Texas and Oklahoma. They did it at USC and UCLA. Now you see Clemson and FSU, which are way far and above the most valuable brand to the networks in the ACC. If those two go, it isn't whether or not the ACC decides to keep that contract. It's whether ESPN wants to keep it. So for folks to think that if they can get out of there, that contract is done from ESPN side, not from the ACC side. And they just keep doing the same thing. And it's once they get full control within those two conferences and Big 12 plays ball with them, you're going to see that autonomous voting power come into play. They'll be able to make whatever division rules they want. They'll be able to make whatever conference postseason rules they want. They can do whatever they want. And when you start adding conference postseason games, those are the big money games. People wondering where's the money at for all this. It's right there. The last time we had one of these evaluated was the Big Ten PAC championship games. That was $20 million. That was in the BCS era. Then they came around and said that those games were basically unofficial lead-ins to the championship tournament. That made their value pretty much double, but it hasn't been shown yet in numbers. Now, if you were to take those now and have them be not just direct lead-ins, but also give you a bye, that increases their power right there, the numbers right there. You could be looking at the championship game now all of a sudden being worth $50 million or more. Just a conference championship game.
Yep, absolutely.
Yeah, go ahead. What's that?
Yeah, absolutely. Correct.
Yeah, if you have two semi games going into that, those could be worth $25 million. You're up to $100 million there. And if you have two, say if you have, 5 division champions and 1 wild card game, now you could have Ohio State and Michigan be in the same division and both of them still make it in your conference tournament. You can point that out to the networks, and they got to pay you for the possibility of having both of those in there.
Yeah.
So that's why I say I think that 5 divisions is where it goes. They're going to have a 6-game conference tournament, and that thing's going to be worth like $150 million. You could have 25 teams in your conference with $150 million from that. Do the math. The payout is way higher than what it is right now.
It's called consolidation. That's what it is.
Yep.
And it's happening
and it's
everywhere, not just in sports, everywhere else. Absolutely. Yep.
And once they get that, then all of these rules that I'm trying to talk to people, like once they have that consolidation, then these rules are just going to miraculously appear because they've had this power since 2015 to do it. People talking about them leaving the NCAA. Why? Why invite the lawsuits? Why invite state and national legislatures looking into them? Why invite it? Just you've got your rulemaking ability now. Now all you have to do is consolidate. And that's what they're doing.
Yeah, no,
So
I agree.
It's tough to see for people, but might as well just prepare themselves for what it is and what it actually is going on.
Yeah, I agree. I agree. When they did the autonomy, when they created the Autonomy 5, they had it to where each school would get one vote, and then the conference would get 3 votes. And you're right. If the Big Ten and the SEC wanted to do something together, but the other 3 conferences had the votes to stop it from happening, right? I mean,
Yep.
So even though SEC might be the most powerful conference and the Big Ten the second most powerful conference, they still couldn't move votes if they wanted to move votes. And then you had to talk about the alliance, the Big Ten and the ACC and the Pac-12. They were going to be an alliance so they were going to be a voting block. Well, we saw how long that lasted. But you're right.
That's what it was all about, though.
We're heading towards the very first episode we did at Peek Around the Corner, episode 1, our manifesto. We talked about the consolidation of what's going on. And teams, universities, USC made sure they were above that stratification line. Schools are trying to position themselves to make sure that they're in that room, right? That they're in that room to decide the future of college football in 2026 is the next hill that you have to climb to make sure you're in that room, to be where you are going to be part of the group, the very top of the group to make the rules going forward. So that's what we're seeing. We're seeing all this jockeying of position among conferences. Pac-12, Big 12, Big 12's trying to solidify themselves to make sure they're in the room. The Pac-12 is unsure right now, so schools might skip off to the Big 12. They're going to try to get to the Big 10 to make sure that they're in that room because 2026 things are going to explode again.
Yeah, and if you look, even the brand new rules for the tournament, the national tournament, they only made it for 2 years.
Yep.
In 2026, they're set to rewrite those.
Yeah,
based upon
it's that's what I'm saying. It's the gold rush.
Yeah.
It's the gold rush of 2026, and that battle is going to be waged here at the end of 2023, 2024, early 2025. The battle is going to be waged right now, and that's why we're seeing the last remnants of this cycle of realignment, because it still hasn't been decided yet. So, but thanks for the phone call.
No problem, man. I always enjoy talking with you.
Appreciate it. Great phone call. Outstanding.
Call from
Lewis.
Ooh, Lewis is in the house. What's going on, Lewis? The floor is yours.
Celebrating Duke's big victory over Carolina. And with all the realignment talk, I'll tie this right in the realignment. There will probably be a time at some point in the next 15 years where this game will no longer be played as a conference game because the 2 schools will end up in different conferences.
Ooh.
That's unfortunate, but that's likely to happen.
Yeah.
But nonetheless, it was a big win for Duke. And I think another thing that is a microcosm of what's going on with realignment is Duke and Carolina, neither team was ranked. They're both having years that are off years for the schools respectively, although Duke will march back to the rankings this week. But College Game Day and ESPN featured the game as the blockbuster. In the meantime, at the same time, you had Miami and Pitt playing for the conference championship with almost nobody paying attention.
Yeah.
So even though Miami and Pitt are playing the game, nobody cares because they're Miami and Pitt, and Duke and Carolina or Duke and Carolina. And that's what you have with the realignment, is the brands that are out there, the Texases, the USCs, that's what's driving it. It's not other schools. They have to win a lot of games. Maybe TCU wins 3 or 4 more straight conference championships and keeps getting to the playoff. They'll build that brand.
Yeah.
It takes years.
Yeah.
Now, 1 to 2, I'll make 2 points and I'll be done. First is I always thought that, and I think you've always said this as well, Greg, that there's no way anybody's leaving the Pac-12 before Washington and Oregon. That as long as Washington and Oregon were there, they were going to be a stabilizing influence and keep the league from breaking apart. So I still can't believe, as much as I want it to happen, that anybody's going to leave ahead of Washington and Oregon. But it certainly seems like that's the case, or that's at least possible.
I think that has changed now. If I'm to believe the Arizona State Money Perch guy, who's been just nails throughout this whole thing and other stories back years, he's saying that has changed. And that has surprised me as well. They say they are ready. The Arizona schools are ready to bolt if they don't see numbers this week. If they need to see an offer this week so they can spend a couple weeks hashing it out. But they need to see an offer this week.
Well, that's interesting because
it is.
There's been a lot of rumbling for years in Arizona and Arizona State. Every time they were upset with something with Larry Scott, they would talk to the Big 12. There were rumors they were doing that. There's actually this conversation informally through intermediaries, not directly, has been going on for a long time. But I still would be surprised. The other thing I'm surprised about is it sounds like it's coming to a head this week when we're wall-to-wall basketball. But this is when the ADs and the presidents from the Big 12 and the Pac-12 are getting together with their commissioners. And so it sounds like we're going to have some movement on this story that will upstage or at least have to be mixed in with all the basketball that's going on. I don't know where it's going to go. There's been a lot of smoke. Colorado State is a red herring. It reminds me of North Texas. It's almost like the Pac-12 is preparing for Colorado to leave because there's really no reason to add CSU. Otherwise, the Big 12 passed on Colorado State. So that's bizarre. But we'll see. I hope that this does come to an end soon. And as a Big 12 fan, I think it was nice to have these schools, but at some point we have to do it if it makes sense from a business standpoint.
Yeah.
And when this is all said and done, we'll see. It might very well be, you months were saying that Yormark just absolutely ran circles around Kliavkoff, or that Kliavkoff was a ninja warrior and pulled a rabbit out of his hat. I hope that Yormark wins, but it'll be crazy. It will be one or the other. One of them is going to look like a hero, and the other is going to look like a goat in a month or two when this is over, and we can talk about it. Thanks for all your information. Have a good evening.
Thank you so much, Lewis. Fantastic phone call. Outstanding. Outstanding. Is Brett Yormark going to look like the GOAT, the greatest of all time? Or is Kliavkoff going to look like the Ninja Warrior? At the very last moment, gets the job done? Woo! One or the other. One or the other. Wow. Great call.
Call from
Soap.
I didn't catch the name.
The name is Soap, Greg.
Boat?
Soap, like you wash your body with soap.
Okay, Soap. Okay, the floor is yours. Go ahead.
All right, my friend. Thank you so much, and welcome back from vacation. We missed you.
Yeah, I missed you all. I really did.
Okay, here's what I think is going to happen if you really observe the situation. I think the Big 12 is going to take 4 schools from the PAC. The Big 10 is going to take 3 schools from the PAC and add Notre Dame. The SEC then will be in a position to take 4 teams from the ACC, with the Big 12 taking 4 teams from the ACC. Now, I know a lot of people are going to say, wait, the ACC has this long-term deal that they can't get out of. Well, the easy way to get out of that arrangement is for 8 teams in the ACC to vote to dissolve the league. That's how you get out of the grant of rights for the ACC. So if the SEC is going to take 4 teams and the Big 12 is going to take 4 teams, there are your 8 teams right there, not considering Notre Dame. So then you would have 4 leagues, correct that. You'd have 3 divisions or 3 conferences, all of 20 teams. And I think that's where we're going. You could also see, and I think this is just my idea, Greg, but I think it'd be pretty cool to have a situation where you had the remaining teams from the PAC, the ACC, the Conference USA, ACC, and Mountain West, the 20 best teams, and do what they do in European soccer, make an ascension league where you have 20 teams, and the very best team in the ascension or the lower division moves up to the Big 12, and the worst team in the Big 12 moves down. Now you can keep the payouts the same, but really, I think Kentucky Kansas is not going to be too concerned about playing in a lower division, much less if they keep their constant 3 teams, as each division would have or each pod would have like 3 teams that are their constant rivalries. But it's just an idea. But I really think what you're looking for is what we're looking at is the leagues turning into 3 divisions of 20 teams. And you know what the dirty story is here? ESPN's going to save about 1/3 of what they're paying right now to the ACC and to the PAC if those teams or if those leagues go by the wayside. They're going to have to pay those teams in different conferences and pay them a little more, but they're going to save at least 1/3 to 1/2. So that's my idea, and I really appreciate the show. I love it, and I enjoy listening to it. And that's it for me. I appreciate it.
Thank you so much. Great phone call. Outstanding. Call again, please.
I shall.
Call from
Bill Yankel.
The floor is yours, sir. Go ahead.
Yeah, I was calling about the Pac-12 and the issues we have between the Big 12.
Yes.
And the reason why I have issues with it is the Pac-12 originally was arrogant, according to the media. I don't know that for a fact. And then the Big 12 got issues with it. So is that the observation you have, or is that just something I came out with?
I'm sorry. I did not hear what you said. You're saying the Pac-12 was what?
Arrogant.
Arrogant?
Yeah, because I guess about a year or 2 years ago, the Pac-12 and the Big 12 lost Texas and Oklahoma.
Yeah.
And then the Pac-12 had a chance to absorb some of the Big 12 schools, which I'm glad they didn't.
Yeah.
And they said no because in a lot of the media that I've heard over the last 2 years, it's kind of pissed me off because they said that they called us a fucking truck stop thing, and we're not. We're just like you guys, except for we're conservative and you guys are liberal. So what I want to know is it like that for everybody, or is that just the schools?
Okay. How do I answer that? Look,
I'm sorry. I'm
it's okay.
No, it's okay.
Okay, let me. I'm gonna have you hang up, and then I'm gonna take the phone off. I'm gonna take time answering that question. Is that okay?
Thank you. That would help a lot.
I'll answer that question.
Bye.
Okay, so I'm getting a lot of comments in the comments section too. I understand this whole Pac-12 versus Big 12. A lot of it has to do with, hey, everyone feels it. The consolidation part of this. It's Brett Yormark is working to make sure his universities get to that gold rush of 2026, that they're in the room, that they're at the highest level of college athletics. That some Pac-12 schools, of course, they want the same thing. And consolidation is pushing everything through this funnel. And the fear is some people are going to be left out. I am not, I see some comments, I am not gleeful about the Pac-12. I'm not joyful about what's going on. I am neutral as can be. I've ripped on the Big 12. For years, I've ripped on the Big 12. In fact, one of these days, maybe I'll just put up a whole day on Twitter at Flag Empire, all the negative comments I said about the Big 12 over the last 10 years. Because they were a horse and buggy conference. Because they were unhealthy. Because they could not bundle all of their sport content together to sell it on the open market. Because of that horrendous Longhorn Network. Schools having their own third-tier media packages. And other stuff. A whole bunch of other stuff. I'm not rooting against the Pac-12. I'm not rooting for the Big 12. Look, we call it like it is from our perspective. And on October 30th, when Brett Yormark struck the deal, we said it was a great deal for the Big 12. It was great, and it was bad news for the Pac-12. And 4 months later, what's going on? It was bad news for the Pac-12, for the Big 12 to get their deal done. Was I supposed to, on October 30th, to be fair? Was I supposed to lie? Was I supposed to say no problem? Pac-12, you're fine, no problem. Yeah, it gets tiring to come on here and to say Pac-12, you're going to have a visibility issue, you're going to have an exposure issue, when hardly anyone else was talking about it. Was I supposed to lie? Was I supposed to not tell the truth? So I'm not rooting against the Pac-12. I'm telling it like it is. It was the Pac-12 that overvalued itself in the marketplace. They didn't understand the market. They didn't understand the tightening of the media market itself, which we talked about months ago. We weren't the ones that had the commissioner himself, Pac-12 commissioner himself, went on multiple podcasts and said UCLA was going to make less joining the Big Ten than if they would if they stayed in the Pac-12. That was the commissioner saying it. That wasn't us. It was the Pac-12 commissioner himself that said, well, geez, of course we don't have a deal done yet because we're waiting for Deion Sanders to become the head coach of the Colorado. He was being serious about that comment. It's not us. The noise isn't causing the problem. The problem was caused by the Pac-12 not reading the market correctly for themselves, for the Big 12. The Pac-12 thought the Big 12 jumped too early. The Pac-12 thought Brett Yormark jumped too early. He didn't jump too early. He jumped just right. Am I supposed to lie about that? Am I supposed to just say, what am I supposed to do here? Yes, Lost High. Yeah, you're right. The finances and market changed. But we said it in October 30th, not March 4th. You get it? You get it? We didn't wait 4 months to say this. We said it 4 months ago. Watch episode 83. I know that you guys are talking politics. I'm not talking politics here. I'm not talking liberal or conservative. I'm talking college football. I don't know what this means. What does this mean? Fetterman? What does that mean, Joseph? What does that mean? The senator of Pennsylvania. What does that have to do with me? Because we read this right from the very beginning. Connor Johnson, how do you know the Pac-12 isn't reading the market right? Okay, well, okay, you're right. The deal isn't done yet. You're correct. You're correct, Connor. Come back to me when the deal's done, if the deal ever gets done. Come back to me. Come back on this show. Call in. Who's making things up? I'm not pro Big 12. I'm not even pro Big 10. I think Big 10 made a huge mistake in having USC and UCLA home on an island. Most Big 10 people disagree with me. We said it at the time. Wait, you think things are going the way the Pac-12? Look at what Ray Anderson said, Arizona State athletic director. He said, well, looks like we're not going to get what we thought we were going to get. We're frustrated. We're frustrated. That's the athletic director in the conference. And that was weeks after our Arizona State guy said that's what Arizona State was believing. So we nailed that story as well. And we were supposed to lie about it. We're not supposed to give you guys information that we have. And I'm sorry, get back to the question. I'm sorry, the phone call. I don't know about Pac-12 arrogance. Pac-12 has great schools. They're outstanding schools. They are the engine of the Pacific Coast. They're great engines of our country. I've said that over and over and over again. But the leadership screwed up, just like the leadership before George Kliavkoff screwed up. Is that wrong too? Larry Scott didn't screw it up. They didn't screw the Pac-12 network up. Of course they did. Am I supposed to just, I don't know what you guys want. It's obvious from Pac-12's own comments, from their own leadership, this has not gone well. We're just supposed to pretend it's going well so I can be seen as fair. We're not going to do that at Peek Around the Corner. There's lots of YouTube channels out there that you can watch that are pro Big 10, pro Pac-12, pro Big 12, pro ACC, pro USC, pro West Virginia. We're just Peek Around the Corner. We're giving you a peek. But I do love it. Love this channel. Love doing this stuff. Thank you so very much. You're pretending the Pac-12 got an equivalent offer of the Big 12 4 months ago. They knew the media market would tank 3 months later. Only this channel knew, apparently. I'm not saying this is not the only channel that knew about it. But go watch our episode 83, Lost Highway. Go watch it. You can find it. Go watch it. The day that the Big 12 struck the deal. Go listen to what we said. And then go compare that. Compare what we said here at Peek Around the Corner. And compare it to West Coast writers out there in the West Coast. Compare it. Go ahead. Go ahead. Okay. Yeah. Thank you, DW. I'm a Big 12 fan. Greg is far from a Big 12 shill. There's no conference that I have ripped on more over the last decade than the Big 12. Okay. All right, we're going to put the phone lines back on. I'm starting to get better. This cold is starting to leave. I'm starting to feel better. I'm going to pass out when this show's over with. Tell you that. The phone number is 763-260-1333. Call if you think I've been unfair to the Pac-12. I get it. Some people believe the Pac-12 is arrogant. There are strengths and weaknesses to these conferences and to these schools, to these universities. My beloved Minnesota Golden Gophers, a lot of weaknesses, lots. You check out our basketball programs lately. Woo, baby.
Call from
Rebecca.
Rebecca, thanks for calling again. What do you got to say?
Greg, I had to bail you out here. That was a rough one for you. Man, I don't envy you in that situation. It's very difficult. I just want to commend you. It's very difficult to try to stay as neutral as you can.
Yeah.
Especially as you've seen, it gets pretty nasty between Pac-12 and Big 12 fans. And I also want to point out, as a Pac-12 school fan, we don't really care about the conference outside of anything else. Like, where we lose, like, we really just, like, we're not like the SEC who will chant that at, like, whatever game. You'll never hear it. Mostly because, like, when Oregon played Ohio State in the national title game and Auburn, I did not root for Oregon. That did not happen. Rivals first. But I just want to say, for everybody, I posted it in there, but you can actually read the Pac-12 guidelines. Their handbook is online. It's available. You can Google it, find it, and read it. It'll tell you exactly what everybody's thinking. I just want to say the whole idea that we're academically, quote, superior, I just want Big 12 fans to know this. Texas Tech is a great school. This is a really good school. Baylor is a good school. Oklahoma State's a really good school too. Like, everybody's got good schools. Every single conference. But the 5 founding members of the Pac-12 are USC, UCLA, Washington, Stanford, and Cal. They're the 5 founders after all the stuff came out in the 50s and everybody else got kicked out. There was a standard. One of the 5 founding principles is academics. It must be placed in balance with athletics. Have to. So I know it sounds like we're coming off as arrogant and we're like looking down on a school. It's not that. It's just really has to be balanced. 3 schools, Washington, USC, and UCLA, were all caught in recruiting scandals and playing scandals, and they clamped down on it, and that's why academics is now a big thing in the Pac-12, and they've kept that over the decades. So I hope that clears it up for people. I know the whole politics thing, the West Coast, we therefore must be, quote, liberal. I know it, that has nothing to do with it. Like, sure, there are certain principles and things that the schools have to maintain, but that's leadership. That's a personal thing, not a school belief. So, again, I have always enjoyed going to Big 12 schools when I've been on their campuses for games and things. Amazing fans, amazing facilities, everything's great. And I went to Old Dominion University in Virginia for 3 years. I also went to North Texas for a year before I transferred to Washington. So, I am not one of those typical fans, but I just want to say, we need to just breathe, let things settle, and can we all just give Greg a moment? You deserve one, Greg. You just got back from vacation. This is just wrong. But glad to have you back.
Yeah, thank you.
Anyway, I'm gonna give up. I know I had to come in and just say that, Greg. You're doing an amazing job.
Thank you.
Everything is a rumor. You're welcome, Greg. But I just want everybody to remember this. Everything is a rumor. If you read through what every reporter has said, everybody's getting different information. I know people say, Winner Kazano or Pac-12 homers. They are talking to their sources who may not be the same sources that like a McMurphy or a Samuel or a Dodd have, or a Greg Flugar. Relax.
Definitely.
And find it in the middle. But Greg, good job. Keep it up as always.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right, a lot of great comments. Please, if you are new to the channel, subscribe to the channel. Smash that like button if you like our content. Share the video with your family and friends. But make sure you subscribe because we're going to pop up on here live at any moment, anytime, tomorrow, the next day, in the morning, during the noon hour. We don't know. We follow where the story goes. We can't wait till the story's over, though, because we're going to be doing watch parties for the spring football games. We did our way too early predictions for the Pac-12, for the Big 12, and for the SEC. We're still going to do the Big 10 and the ACC coming up. So we can't wait to do that. So lots of great stuff going on. I can't wait to spring football. We cover everything in college football because we love it all, and that includes the spring football games. So, can't wait. I know the Golden Gophers spring football game is April 22nd, 11 o'clock at the Big Ten Network. We're going to be doing that for sure. Probably another game during that day, and of course other days all through April. So, subscribe to our channel. If you need extra content, college football content to get you through the days and the nights and the off season, subscribe to our channel. Thank you so much. Greg, do you know who the WCH champion is? Yes, the Minnesota Golden Gophers, women hockey. Long show tonight. Yeah, we've been on vacation. I've got a bad cold. I know once we stop, I'm going to hit the bed and conk out, and who knows, and we'll try to get it going. There won't be any singing tonight. The voice is gone. Row the boat, the Gophers blow, LOL. Rebecca, what can you tell us about Stanford? They didn't get the same meetings at Washington, Oregon. We thought they were going to, but they didn't.
Call from
Immaculate.
Brian's back in the house. What do you got to say, sir?
Real quick, just wanted to talk some Stanford if you're up for it.
Yep.
I've said that I don't believe Stanford will be in the Big Ten, and it has nothing to do with the Big Ten saying no to Stanford. If Stanford wants to join the Big Ten will take them in a heartbeat. One, it'll make all their academia so damn happy that they won't care whom else the presidents invite. Problem is, I don't think Stanford wants anything to do with the Big Ten. Someone was asking why they didn't get any meetings. It's because why would Stanford want to be part of the Big Ten Academic Alliance? Why would they want to offer up their internship programs to Big Ten people? And one of the reasons why you go to Stanford is because of the jobs you're going to get placed in afterwards. Why would they offer up those opportunities to share with the Big Ten? The PAC doesn't do that. So I don't think Stanford wants anything to do with the Big Ten. I don't think they want coast-to-coast games, and I don't think they want to take part in the Big Ten Academic Alliance. Just kind of like how who was that Eastern school that joined just for lacrosse because they didn't have to be part of the Big Ten Alliance. So people wondering about that. I just don't see it happening. They can do whatever they want. They could pay all of their expenses just off of the dividends from their endowment. They don't need the money. So that's probably why people aren't hearing anything about Stanford, is because they really don't need the money. They don't need to force their rich kids playing lacrosse or rowing, on the water to go all the way to the East Coast for a matchup. Yes, and it was John Hopkins lax, someone said in the chat. I don't see them doing that because a lot of these kids come from a lot of money for people who put a lot of money to Stanford. Why would they do that to their kids? The amount of money that they would lose is probably more than they would gain from signing that deal with the Big Ten. And my people might be like, what, really? Yeah, you're talking like, what's their endowment now? It's $1.8 billion or something crazy. I mean, they'll make more off the dividends from that than they will off of any TV contract. So I don't see for Stanford leaving. I see them holding the door open for everyone to leave. And then, as someone else said in the chat, they'll just invite whomever they want into the PAC afterwards and have themselves a West Coast Ivy League.
I do think there's questions around, would Stanford be willing to adapt to the new college football world, right? Where, it could very well happen here in the next couple of years. We talked about it, peek around the corner, all the way since episode 1, where there's going to be direct deposits, higher compensation from the student athletes directly coming from the universities and or conferences, where they becoming employees of the universities, the student athletes, or quasi-employees of the university, or a third party representing the university, however they do it, but they becoming more of an employees, more pay-to-play type of college football world. People do wonder if Stanford would really enter into that world, and that may be what is possibly holding Stanford to Big Ten back.
Personally, I think it's just a matter of their alumni, their big donors. They don't care. They don't care how Stanford plays on the football field against most of these schools. Kind of like how folks from the Ivy League, they care more about how their team plays against other Ivy League teams. They don't care that their teams aren't playing in national championships or whatever. I mean, they have a 40,000 person stadium and they get maybe 20 at best. Most of their people move and live nationwide. They're not all focused in that area, and most of the people in San Francisco have zero ties to them. Like, Stanford does not get you that market. Like, it's not a slam on Stanford. It's just they're a small, massively elite private school. But the Big Ten would take them because their academia then wouldn't care at all if all of a sudden they become a peer of Oregon, or if you invite in, say, an ASU that has all these other numbers that the networks like, the future, all that stuff. If they can get Stanford to join, well, then now they have a lot more leeway with their academia. But I don't think Stanford wants to at all. I could be wrong, but I just think people need to realize that when they look at Stanford versus some of these other PAC schools, that it's two different worlds. Whether or not Stanford wants to spend any of that money on their athletics, kind of a moot point. I don't think that their people care about athletics that much. They're busy doing much, much bigger things. Like, they don't care about football. They don't care about basketball. They might care about, some of them might care about lacrosse. Some of them might care about rowing. Some of them might care about some other little sports, but they don't care. Right? Yeah. It's just a non-mover. And to have them and try to send all of their students across the country in a coast-to-coast conference, I just don't see them wanting to ever do that. So if people are wondering why Stanford wouldn't end up in the Big Ten, it'd be because Stanford doesn't want to be in the Big Ten.
Okay.
That's all I got for that, though.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Awesome. Now, I get Joseph asks if Cal, or he makes a statement, if Cal is doing $2 billion a year in academic research, is the president really concerned about $30 million? I get this comment a lot. If you watch the University of California Board of Regents meetings during the UCLA situation, you would heard the Board of Regents being concerned that the athletic department can't pay its own bills. These universities, there's huge endowments. These endowments, most of it is tied to certain missions. They're not tied to the athletic department, so they can't use that money. The universities the athletic directors of these universities are very concerned about the front porch of the universities. The front porch is the athletic department. And I've said this over and over again at Peek Around the Corner. I don't even care about the difference in millions of dollars that the Pac-12 might get versus what the Big 12 gets, or how much money per team, per school, per year a Pac-12 would get in this media deal versus what an ACC school would get to 2036. The concern about this Pac-12 media deal, the concern that Arizona has for its basketball program, the concern that Colorado has when they finally get Deion Sanders, a big-time coach that gives them a whole bunch of exposure. The concern of these athletic departments is the exposure piece of this Pac-12 media deal. That's the concern. Yes, these universities, they have billions of dollars in research. So are the Big Ten universities, right? But they don't want, just because they have billions of dollars in research, they don't want to see their athletic department decline, and collapse. Why would they want to see that? Yes, they make billions of dollars in research. But people keep bringing this up like, well, they make billions of dollars in research. Therefore, it don't matter if we lose 30, 50, $100 million a year. Yeah, it does matter. That's separate money. They're not going to... California, these universities don't want their athletic departments to be buried. These athletic departments help bring in good students. They do. Don't know what to tell you. So yes, California is concerned. And if you don't believe me, go watch their own University of California Board of Regents meetings they had when they were talking about UCLA. They were very concerned about it. So, Joseph, ask them your question. Ask them your question. Because they're obviously very, very, very concerned. I do agree with Connor Johnson on this. Oregon State Beavers are going to be a very nice team. I don't know about DJ Ungale being your quarterback, but everything else looks real good for the Oregon State Beavers. Number 2 in defense in the Pac-12 last year. Martinez back as running back. Offensive line is set. Oregon State head coach, they're set. Pac-12 is stacked for 2023. Not just the quarterback position. I got Washington winning it all right now in the Pac-12. Heck, I got Washington going to the playoffs. Very excited about the Pac-12 season for 2023. Oregon State included in that. Cloak and dagger, cloak and dagger, cloak and dagger. So, I think we're going to close it up. We've been on the air for about 2.5 hours. It's nice to be back. Vacation was great. Me and the wife had a great time up in the Canadian-Minnesota border, right off the lake, Lake Superior, the biggest freshwater lake in the world. It was fantastic. But it's nice to be back, nice to put on the show. The voice is almost gone. No singing tonight. Again, if you're new to the channel, before you leave, please subscribe to the channel. Smash that like button. If you like our content, share the video with your family and friends. But make sure you subscribe, because we could be coming on anytime. Anytime. We're following this Pac-12 story, this FSU story. We were following it on December 26th. There's more to that coming up. We're looking forward to spring football games, spring practices, and the reports coming out. The reports coming out of these teams, quarterback battles. It's exciting. We love it. We love everything college football. So if you love everything college football, subscribe to our channel. Okay? Thank you, Zarnell Malone. Thank you for coming in. Thank you, sir. Cal and Stanford don't see sports. That's the front door. They're lying around the corner for student. Cal just don't want to cut some underperforming sports. Thank you, Zarnell, for the comment. Thank you for the super chat. Appreciate your generosity, helping us keep the lights on here at Peek Around the Corner. Thanks to all of you for joining us today. Until next time, from all of us at Peek Around the Corner, to all of you, please, you all take care of each other. Thank you so very much.